Hello, folks. Tonight, we're taking a thrilling leap back in time, all the way to the 1800s. Ever wondered how you'd fare on the real Oregon Trail? This journey, my friends, is far more grueling than most of us could ever imagine. Before we dive in, if you find value in these historical bedtime stories, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the content. I'm curious. Share in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. It's always a delight to learn who's joining us from different corners of the globe. Now, make yourself comfortable. Perhaps turn on some gentle background music, and let's embark on tonight's adventure together as we explore why you wouldn't last a day on the real Oregon Trail. Imagine you're planning a road trip today. You'd probably pull out your smartphone, pull up a map, and plot your route. You might even check the weather, look for gas stations along the way, or search for interesting stops. Now, imagine doing this same thing in the mid-1800s, but without a car, without a smartphone, without a map, and without any kind of certainties. Instead, you've got a covered wagon, your family, and a journey of over 2,000 miles ahead of you. That's the Oregon Trail for you, my friends. This seemingly endless trail, stretching approximately 2,170 miles. That's about the same as driving from Miami to Seattle today. Was the route taken by American pioneers in the 19th century as they sought out a new life in the Oregon Territory. But unlike today's cross-country treks, where the biggest worries might be a flat tire or a lousy fast food meal, the journey on the Oregon Trail was fraught with challenges that could cost you your life. We're talking about diseases like cholera and dysentery, accidents that could lead to serious injuries or death, and weather conditions that could change in a heartbeat. Imagine trying to navigate a wagon across a flooded river, or getting stuck in a blizzard in the middle of nowhere. That's not to mention the constant threat of running out of supplies, the 19th century equivalent of your smartphone battery dying, but with far more dire consequences. Now, who were the brave, or perhaps foolhardy souls who decided to embark on this perilous journey? Well, the trail was originally used by fur trappers and missionaries in the 1820s. Think of them as the early adopters, the startup entrepreneurs of their time. One of the most famous of these pioneers were Marcus and Narcissa Whitman, who established a mission in present-day Washington state in 1836, kind of like setting up a pop-up shop in the wilderness. It wasn't until the 1840s, though, that the Oregon Trail really boomed. This was when large numbers of settlers began to use the trail to seek out new opportunities in the West. It was the 19th century version of the modern-day tech boom. But instead of moving to Silicon Valley for a job at a startup, families were packing up their lives and heading west in the hopes of securing a piece of fertile farmland. But this mass migration wasn't just a spontaneous decision by thousands of individuals. It was part of a larger phenomenon of American expansionism, driven by the idea of manifest destiny. This was the belief that it was the destiny, or even duty, of the U.S. to expand across the continent. You could think of it as the ultimate real estate grab, with the government playing the role of the ambitious developer. But like any real estate development, this westward expansion had its share of controversies. The Oregon Trail cut through lands that were home to numerous Native American tribes. As settlers poured in, conflicts inevitably arose. It was a classic case of new neighbors, old disputes, only with much higher stakes. Imagine for a moment you're a settler on the Oregon Trail. You've left everything familiar behind, endured unimaginable hardships, and finally arrived at your destination, only to find that it's already occupied and the current occupants aren't exactly thrilled to see you. It's a bit like moving into a new apartment, only to find out that it's haunted, and the ghosts aren't happy about the intrusion. So as you can see, the Oregon Trail was more than just a long trek west. It was a journey fraught with danger and uncertainty, but also one that was filled with hope and dreams. And while we might not be packing up our wagons and heading west today, the legacy of the Oregon Trail lives on in the spirit of adventure and the pursuit of new opportunities that continue to define America. Because, let's face it, who among us hasn't dreamed of packing up and starting fresh somewhere new? Only, hopefully, with fewer dysentery outbreaks along the way. Let's take a stroll back in time, shall we? The year is 1820, and you're a fur trapper. Think of this as being the equivalent of today's adventurous wildlife photographer, but with a lot more skinning and less Instagram. You're in the rugged wilderness of the American West, following the trails of beavers and other furry critters, all in the name of fetching a good price for their pelts back east. The Oregon Trail isn't even a trail yet. It's just a vague notion, a whisper of a path that you and your fellow trappers are slowly carving out of the wilderness. Now, you're not just out here for the love of nature and the thrill of the hunt. You're part of a global fashion trend. A seemingly insatiable demand for beaver hats in Europe has sent you and your fellow fur trappers westward. In today's terms, it's like being on the cutting edge of a new tech startup. Only your product is beaver pelts, and your office is the untamed American frontier. But here's the thing, this isn't some leisurely traipse through the woods. It's grueling work, fraught with danger. Picture trying to navigate a maze while blindfolded. Only the walls are towering mountain ranges. The floor is a treacherous river, and there's always a chance of running into a grizzly bear. Not exactly a walk in the park, is it? Then there are the diseases: cholera, dysentery, typhoid fever, the vintage versions of today's worst flu season. There's no Pepto-Bismol or Tylenol within 1,000 miles. It's just you, your wits, and whatever medicinal herbs you can find. That's the life of the fur trapper on the early Oregon Trail. Now, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the missionaries. Think of them as the early influencers. Only their platform is religion, not social media. In the 1830s, missionaries like Marcus and Narcissa Whitman start to use the trail that the fur trappers have charted. Their goal is to convert the Native American tribes to Christianity. They're brimming with the same kind of zeal that drives today's vegan bloggers to convert everyone to kale smoothies. The Whitmans even set up a mission in what is now Washington State, sort of like setting up a pop-up shop in uncharted territory. But like the fur trappers, the missionaries face their fair share of hardships. Imagine trying to sell someone on a brand new concept, like, say, convincing your technophobe grandpa to use a smartphone. Only the stakes are much higher, and your audience isn't particularly interested in what you're selling. Now, picture this. You finally reached your destination after months of hardship. You've survived disease, battled the elements, and made it to the promised land, only to realize that the territory is already occupied, and the current occupants aren't thrilled about your arrival. It's kind of like finally getting to that trendy new restaurant, only to find out there's a 2-hour wait, and they've just run out of your favorite dish. So there you have it, a glimpse into the challenging lives of the fur trappers and missionaries on the early Oregon Trail. It wasn't all just breathtaking vistas and camaraderie around the campfire. It was a grueling test of endurance, a test that many failed. And while you might not be hunting beavers or preaching the gospel on the frontier, their spirit of adventure and determination lives on. Every time you try that new fitness trend, or embark on a challenging project, or even just try to get through the day when everything seems to be going wrong. Because in the end, we're all just pioneers on our own personal Oregon trails. Only, hopefully, with fewer dysentery outbreaks along the way. Imagine you're Marcus and Narcissa Whitman, a physician and his wife with a burning desire to spread Christianity to the indigenous people of the American West. It's 1836, and you've just embarked on the Oregon Trail, a treacherous 2,170-mile overland route known for its harsh weather conditions, disease, and accidents. Sounds like a fun family vacation, right? Now remember, this is the 19th century. There's no such thing as Google Maps to guide your journey. Instead, you're relying on good old-fashioned maps and compasses, and the hope that the person who drew those maps actually knew what they were doing. In many ways, it's like trying to navigate a new city without your smartphone. Only instead of missing your lunch reservation, you could end up lost in the wilderness, miles from civilization. Eventually, you reach your destination, the Oregon Territory, a vast, unspoiled wilderness that stretches as far as the eye can see. But it's not exactly the paradise you imagined. There's no gourmet food truck waiting to serve you a hot meal, no fancy hotel offering fluffy towels and a comfortable bed. Instead, you're greeted by bitter cold, biting insects, and the constant threat of wild animals. It's the equivalent of booking a luxury resort vacation, only to find out you've actually signed up for a survivalist boot camp. Despite these challenges, the Whitmans set up a mission in present-day Washington State. They build a cabin, plant crops, and begin their work of converting the local Cayuse tribe to Christianity. It's a bit like starting your own business from scratch. Only instead of dealing with tax forms and marketing plans, you're trying to overcome language barriers and cultural differences. Unfortunately, things don't go exactly as planned. The Cayuse aren't particularly interested in giving up their traditional beliefs and customs. And, as if that weren't challenging enough, the Whitmans also have to contend with a deadly measles outbreak that ravages the tribe. This is where things get really tricky. The Cayuse don't understand why the Whitmans' medicines can save some people, but not others, and they begin to suspect foul play. It's like trying to explain the concept of Netflix buffering to your grandparents. Only instead of dealing with a slow internet connection, you're dealing with a life or death situation. In the end, it all comes crashing down. The Cayuse, convinced that the Whitmans are poisoning them, attack the mission. Marcus and Narcissa are killed, along with 12 others. It's a tragic end to a journey that began with such high hopes and dreams. But their story serves as a stark reminder of the harsh realities of the Oregon Trail and the challenges that faced those brave, or perhaps foolhardy, enough to embark on it. So next time you're complaining about the traffic on your morning commute, or the long line at your favorite coffee shop, just remember, at least you're not trying to cross the Oregon Trail. Because, as the Whitmans' story shows, the reality of the Oregon Trail was far from the romanticized version we often imagine. It was a grueling, dangerous journey, filled with hardships and setbacks, but it was also a journey of hope and determination, a testament to the pioneering spirit that continues to define us today. Imagine, if you will, the year is 1843, and you're living a life akin to a black and white movie in the bustling city of Independence, Missouri. Your daily routine might include fetching water from the nearest well, tending to your farm animals, or perhaps, if you're feeling particularly festive, breaking out the fiddle for a good old-fashioned hoedown. Life is simple, but hard. And then, one day, you hear a whisper, a rumor about a land of opportunity out west, a place called Oregon. This isn't just any whisper, mind you. It's the kind of whisper that starts small, but soon grows to a deafening roar, permeating every corner of your town. Every conversation, every gathering, every late-night whisper under the stars, it all revolves around that one word, Oregon. You see, this is the era of manifest destiny, a time when the American spirit, fueled by a sense of divine destiny and unquenchable ambition, drove thousands to abandon their homes and embark on a journey of a lifetime. Manifest destiny. It's like the 19th century equivalent of a motivational poster, exclaiming, "You can do it." But instead of encouraging you to finish your fitness routine or eat more kale, it's urging you to pack up your life, bid farewell to everything you know, and trek thousands of miles across uncharted territory. Sounds fun, right? Well, imagine trading in your cozy bed, with its memory foam mattress and high thread count sheets, for a makeshift bedroll under an open sky. Instead of cuddling up with a good book or your favorite Netflix series, you get to huddle around a campfire, listening to the eerie howls of wolves in the distance. Your alarm clock, a rooster's crow on a good day. On bad ones, it's the blistering cold of dawn or the relentless heat of the midday sun. Your daily commute is no longer a quick drive or a leisurely walk to the office. It's a 15-mile slog through deserts, mountains, and rivers. And forget about grabbing a latte at Starbucks. Your drink of choice is now tepid water from the nearest creek, with a dash of dysentery for extra flavor. If this sounds like a nightmare, you're not far off the mark. According to the Oregon Historical Society, the Oregon Trail was a 2,170-mile gauntlet of disease, accidents, harsh weather, and even harsher living conditions. The Smithsonian Magazine notes that it was a path initially blazed by fur trappers and missionaries in the 1820s. But it wasn't until the fever of manifest destiny took hold in the 1840s that thousands of settlers began to tread this perilous trail. Take the story of Marcus and Narcissa Whitman, for example. These early pioneers established a mission in present-day Washington state in 1836, paving the way for future settlers. But as HistoryCom points out, their journey was far from an idyllic adventure. They encountered numerous tribulations, from starvation to hostile encounters with Native American tribes, and ultimately met a tragic end when their mission was attacked by the Cayuse tribe. So why did so many people risk their lives to make this journey? The answer lies in the powerful allure of manifest destiny. This ideology, fueled by a potent mix of political ambition, cultural zeal, and religious fervor, convinced thousands that it was their God-given duty to expand westward, to cultivate the wilderness, and spread the virtues of civilization, democracy, and capitalism. In the end, the reality of the Oregon Trail was far from the romanticized notion of a grand adventure. It was a grueling, perilous journey, filled with hardships and setbacks. But it was also a testament to the indomitable spirit of the pioneers. Their stories of hope and determination continue to echo through history, reminding us of the lengths people will go to in pursuit of their dreams. So the next time you feel frustrated by a slow Wi-Fi connection, or grumble about the lack of vegan options at your local restaurant, just remember, at least you're not slogging through the Oregon Trail. Because, as the pioneers of yesteryear could tell you, sometimes the path to your dreams is paved not with gold, but with hardship, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of manifest destiny. Imagine you're about to embark on a journey, no, not the kind where you're crammed into a coach class seat, praying you won't get the middle one, or stuck in a car with questionable air conditioning, and a sibling who insists on playing the same 3 songs on a loop. No, this journey involves staking everything you own on a rickety wagon, your survival skills, and the slim promise of a better life, about 2,170 miles away. Welcome to the Oregon Trail, ladies and gentlemen, where your GPS is as good as a rock, and your packed lunch is, well, probably just another rock. In the mid-19th century, American pioneers, fueled by an adventurous spirit, the promise of fertile land, and a healthy dose of manifest destiny, packed up their lives and set off for the Oregon Territory. It's kind of like that time you moved apartments, except instead of a moving truck, they had Conestoga wagons. These wagons, often called prairie schooners, were like the SUVs of their time, except with less legroom and no cup holders. And forget about heated seats. In fact, forget about seats altogether, because most of the time, pioneers walked alongside their wagons. You thought legroom was a problem on your last flight. Try walking 15 miles a day. Now let's talk about packing. When you go on a trip, you might pack a suitcase or two. But when you're a pioneer, your suitcase is a wagon, and you've got to cram in everything you need to survive. We're talking food, clothing, tools, spare parts for the wagon, maybe a cook stove if you're feeling fancy. And don't forget about the oxen. You'll need those to pull your wagon. Imagine trying to squeeze all that into your overhead compartment. And then there's the food. If you think your diet is restrictive, try eating hardtack, basically a cracker made from flour and water that could double as a brick for months on end. Or salt pork, which was essentially just salty, fatty meat. Fruits and vegetables. Sure, if you could find them. But most of the time, you were stuck with dried beans, coffee, and maybe a bit of dried fruit if you were lucky. It's like the world's worst meal prep, with no chance of a cheat day. But perhaps the most daunting part of the journey was the uncertainty. There were no weather apps to warn you of an incoming storm. No online reviews to tell you that the river crossing up ahead was more of a death trap than a scenic route. You had to rely on guidebooks, the advice of those who had gone before you, and good old-fashioned luck. It was like navigating a new city without Google Maps, only instead of getting lost in the wrong neighborhood, you might end up with cholera. In the end, though, the pioneers of the Oregon Trail were resilient. They faced hardships with courage and determination, and their stories continue to inspire us today. So the next time you're frustrated with your slow Wi-Fi or your food delivery app gets your order wrong, take a moment to remember the pioneers. They may not have had cloud-like mattresses or cooling gels, but they did have an unshakable belief in their dreams. And that, my friend, is something worth remembering. So let's say you've decided to take a trip down the Oregon Trail, the real one, not the pixelated version from your old computer class. You've packed up your wagon with all your earthly possessions, kissed your loved ones goodbye, and set off into the sunset to fulfill your manifest destiny. It sounds like the start of an epic adventure, right? Well, brace yourself, because life on the Oregon Trail was anything but glamorous. Think about your morning routine. You probably hit the snooze button a few times, then roll out of bed to brew some coffee, groggily scroll through your emails, and maybe even squeeze in a quick workout before you start your day. But for the pioneers on the Oregon Trail, mornings arrived with the sun, and there was no snooze button on Mother Nature's alarm clock. Instead of sipping coffee while catching up on emails, these hardy folks would start their day by hitching up their oxen and hitting the dusty trail. And forget about your morning yoga session. For the pioneers, their daily workout involved walking lots and lots of walking. We're talking about 15 to 20 miles a day, every day, for about 5 months. That's like walking from New York City to Los Angeles with no sidewalks, no sneakers, and definitely no Spotify playlist to keep you motivated. Of course, all that walking meant these pioneers worked up quite an appetite. But instead of ordering takeout or whipping up a quick meal from your blue apricot or Hello Garden subscription box, dinner on the Oregon Trail was a bit more primitive. Your menu options were basically whatever you could hunt or gather along the way. Think squirrels, rabbits, and the occasional buffalo, if you were lucky. And if hunting wasn't your thing, you could always fall back on your stash of dried meat, hardtack, a type of biscuit so tough it could break a tooth, and coffee. Lots and lots of coffee. But hey, at least you didn't have to worry about doing the dishes, right? Wrong. After dinner, the pioneers would have to clean up, gather firewood, and make any necessary repairs to their wagons or equipment. And if you thought your IKEA furniture was a pain to assemble, try fixing a broken wagon wheel with nothing but a few basic tools and the light of a flickering campfire. When it came to sleeping arrangements, the Oregon Trail was no five-star hotel. Instead of sinking into a plush, memory foam mattress at the end of the day, the pioneers would unroll their bedrolls, essentially a blanket or two, and sleep on the ground. Or, if they were lucky, they might have a straw-filled mattress to lie on. But don't get your hopes up. This was no Sealy Posturepedic. The straw was scratchy, lumpy, and probably home to a few creepy crawlies. It's safe to say that a good night's sleep was a rare luxury on the Oregon Trail. Despite the hardships, the pioneers pushed on. They endured sickness, injury, and exhaustion, not to mention the constant threat of bad weather and potential conflicts with Native American tribes. All the while, they had to maintain a steady pace to reach Oregon before winter set in. So yes, life on the Oregon Trail was no walk in the park. It was grueling, dangerous, and downright uncomfortable. But for those who survived the journey, the rewards were immense. They were able to claim land, build a home, and start a new life in the West. And while their experiences were far removed from our modern conveniences and comforts, their stories of perseverance and bravery continue to inspire us today. So the next time you find yourself complaining about a slow Wi-Fi connection or a lukewarm latte, remember the pioneers of the Oregon Trail. They might not have had memory foam mattresses or meal subscription boxes, but they did have an unshakable belief in their dreams. And that, my friend, is something worth remembering. Imagine trying to make a cross-country trip in a wagon. No, not a station wagon, a literal horse-drawn wagon. Now, imagine that trip is over 2,000 miles long. No Google Maps, no roadside eateries, and certainly no air conditioning. You're on the Oregon Trail in the mid-19th century, and let me tell you, it's no leisurely Sunday drive. You'd start out from the Missouri River, full of hope and dreams of a new life in the Oregon Territory. But not long into your journey, you'd find out what you're really in for. Accidents were a dime a dozen on the trail, a broken wheel here, an injured horse there. And if your wagon tipped over while you were crossing a river, well, you'd better hope you packed your swimming trunks. And then there's the weather, unpredictable, unrelenting, and utterly uninterested in your travel plans. One day you'd be baking in the sun, the next you'd be shivering in a downpour. And when winter rolled around, you'd be facing sub-zero temperatures and snowstorms that could bury your wagon in a heartbeat. But the weather was just the tip of the iceberg. Disease was the real killer on the Oregon Trail. Cholera, dysentery, measles, These were everyday threats for the pioneers, and with no doctors or hospitals for miles, catching a disease was often a death sentence. Imagine being Marcus and Narcissa Whitman, who, according to the Smithsonian Magazine, were among the first to make the journey in 1836. They left their comfortable life in the East to establish a mission in present-day Washington state. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were driven by their faith and their dream of a better life in the West. But even they could not have predicted the hardships they would face. They watched as their fellow travelers fell ill, succumbed to accidents, or simply gave up and turned back. They endured harsh weather, scarce food, and the constant threat of attacks from disgruntled Native American tribes, whose lands were being encroached upon by these new settlers. Yet, despite all this, they pressed on. They had a dream, a vision, a destination. It wasn't just about surviving the journey. It was about reaching the promised land, the lush, fertile valleys of the Oregon Territory. And they weren't alone. Thousands of pioneers followed in their wagon tracks, driven by the same dream. They braved the same hardships, faced the same dangers. Some didn't make it, but many did. And their stories, preserved in letters and journals, give us a glimpse into what life was like on the real Oregon Trail. So the next time you're stuck in traffic or complaining about the air conditioning in your car not being cold enough, remember the pioneers of the Oregon Trail. They didn't have GPS or climate control, but they had determination, grit, and a desire for a better life. And in the end, isn't that what really matters? Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to appreciate my warm, comfortable bed. No straw pallets or damp floors for me. Thank you very much. Good night, and sweet dreams of your own personal Oregon Territory, wherever that may be. Let's settle in for a tale that's bound to make your comfortable, easy life seem like a 5-star vacation. This is the story of Elizabeth Dixon Smith, a woman whose resilience and determination would put the toughest of us to shame. You see, Elizabeth was one of the thousands of pioneers who embarked on the treacherous journey along the Oregon Trail in the mid-19th century. But she wasn't just any pioneer. She was a widow and a mother of 7. Picture Elizabeth alone in the wilderness, her belongings piled high in a covered wagon, her children huddled around her. No GPS, no roadside assistance, no AAA to call if the wagon wheel broke. The only thing she had was her grit, her courage, and a desire for a better life, much like the memory foam in your modern bed, shaping itself around your body, providing comfort. Elizabeth's dreams of a better future shaped her path, pushing her forward. Now, I know what you're thinking. How bad could the Oregon Trail really be? After all, we've all played the game, right? You get a wagon, buy some food, and off you go. Maybe you lose an ox or two. Maybe you come down with a case of dysentery. But hey, it's all part of the fun, right? Wrong. Imagine the worst road trip of your life. Multiply it by 100, and then, just for good measure, throw in a deadly snakebite, a bout of cholera, or a blizzard in the middle of nowhere. That's the Oregon Trail for you. It's like the difference between camping in your backyard and being dropped into the middle of the Amazon. Sure, they're both technically outdoors, but one of them is a whole lot more likely to kill you. Elizabeth, like many others, faced numerous challenges on the trail. Disease was rampant, accidents were common, and the weather, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly like adjusting the thermostat in your house. No, the weather on the trail was as unpredictable as a cat on catnip. One day it might be sunny and warm. The next, you could be huddled in your wagon, praying the snow would stop. And yet, despite all the odds, Elizabeth made it. She covered over 2,000 miles, traversed prairies and mountains, crossed rivers, and endured hardships that would make the bravest of us quiver. But she didn't do it for the glory or for some grand adventure. She did it for a better life, a life of freedom, prosperity, and opportunity for her children. So the next time you're tempted to complain about traffic or grumble about the air conditioning not being cold enough, remember Elizabeth Dixon Smith. Remember her courage, her determination, her unyielding spirit. And remember that the luxury of complaining about trivial discomforts is a testament to the hardiness and audacity of those who came before us, who braved the real Oregon Trail and carved a path for the rest of us to follow. And if you're lucky enough to find yourself under a cozy blanket tonight, nestled into a comfortable bed, think of Elizabeth and the thousands of pioneers who made do with a patch of ground and a sky full of stars. So good night, sleep tight, and don't let the bedbugs bite, or the dysentery, for that matter. Imagine this: you're a pioneer on the Oregon Trail in the 19th century. As you're navigating the treacherous terrain and bracing yourself against the harsh weather, you come across a group of Native Americans. You can't just whip out your smartphone and Google how to communicate with Native Americans or what's the etiquette for trading with tribes. Nope, you're on your own, equipped with nothing more than your wits and a pocketful of trinkets. Now, you might envision this encounter as something out of a Wild West movie, tense, fraught with danger, and high on drama. But in reality, interactions between pioneers and Native American tribes were often much less dramatic. Sure, there were conflicts, misunderstandings, and altercations, but there were also peaceful exchanges, trade, and even friendships. Consider the case of Narcissa Whitman and her husband Marcus, a couple of early settlers who established a mission in what's now Washington State. They didn't have a GPS or a handy trail guide. Instead, they relied on the knowledge and goodwill of the local tribes to help them navigate the terrain and survive the harsh conditions. They offered supplies, medical aid, and education in exchange. A sort of barter system before the concept of Amazon Prime was even a twinkle in history's eye. But let's be honest, not all interactions were this friendly. As more settlers poured in, fueled by dreams of fertile lands and the promise of manifest destiny, a belief that the expansion of the U.S. across the continent was both justified and inevitable, tensions rose. Imagine moving into a new apartment, only to find a stranger claiming it as their own because they believe it's their divine right. Not exactly a recipe for a friendly neighborly relationship, is it? The U.S. government, in its bid to promote westward expansion, often overlooked the rights and treaties of the Native American tribes. As a result, conflicts arose, often turning violent. Yet, even in these tumultuous times, there were pioneers who sought peaceful coexistence, understanding that they were the newcomers, the uninvited guests encroaching on centuries-old homelands. So, as you huddle in your wagon, wary of the group of Native Americans approaching, remember, they are not the savages history often paints them to be. They are a people rich in culture and tradition, with an intimate knowledge of the land you're stumbling through. You might offer them coffee beans, not for brewing a latte, but for trading. In return, they might offer you a buffalo robe, not a fashion statement, but a vital shield against the biting cold. This exchange, simple as it may seem, is a testament to the resilience and adaptability of the human spirit, a spirit that transcends cultural differences and language barriers. But remember, this isn't a resort vacation where you're immersing yourself in the local culture for a few days before jetting back to the comfort of your home. This is survival. The stakes are high, and one wrong move could be disastrous. So tread carefully, learn quickly, and respect the people whose land you're traversing. Your survival might just depend on it. As you drift off to sleep tonight, nestled in your comfortable bed, spare a thought for the pioneers of the Oregon Trail. Think of their encounters with Native American tribes, the friendships, the conflicts, the trades, and the lessons. And remember, history isn't just a dry list of dates and events. It's a tapestry of human experiences that often echo our own in surprising ways. So sleep tight and dream of a world where understanding and respect pave the way for shared survival. Because isn't that the world we all want to wake up to? Imagine, if you will, the US government of the mid-19th century, a bit like a used car salesman, but instead of selling you a questionable '86 Ford with a dodgy engine, they're trying to entice you with the promise of fertile land thousands of miles away. Yes, that's right. Uncle Sam was in the business of selling dreams, dreams of bountiful crops, sprawling homesteads, and a fresh start. But like that '86 Ford, the reality of the Oregon Trail was often far from the glossy image presented in the brochure. Manifest destiny. Ever heard of it? It was the 19th century doctrine or belief that the U.S. was destined by God to expand its dominion and spread democracy across the entire North American continent. Think of it as the government's marketing strategy, a divine endorsement, if you will. The U.S. government used this idea as a rallying cry to encourage people to pack up their lives and head west. Now, remember those late-night infomercials promising revolutionary kitchen gadgets or life-changing exercise machines? Well, the U.S. government's promotion of the Oregon Trail wasn't so different. They promised fertile land, opportunity, and the chance to start anew, all for the low cost of risking your life on a treacherous 2,170-mile journey. And just as your new vegetable spiralizer didn't come with a warning about how impossible it is to clean, the government didn't exactly advertise the dangers of the trail. Forget about the threat of disease. the lack of medical supplies, the grueling physical toll, or the potential for conflict with Native American tribes. Those were just minor details, right? Let's talk about Marcus and Narcissa Whitman, the proverbial guinea pigs of the Oregon Trail. They were missionaries, not settlers, but their journey in 1836 showed others that it was possible to make it to the Oregon Territory. Think of them as the trailblazers, quite literally. But remember, their success came with a cost. Narcissa's letters home told of hardship, loneliness, and the ever-present danger of the unknown. And what about the Native American tribes whose land the trail cut through? The government's brochures didn't mention them much, either, a glaring omission, considering the impact of this westward expansion on their lives and cultures. Yet, their role in the journey of the Oregon Trail is significant. Many pioneers would have struggled to survive without trading with Native Americans for food and supplies, or learning survival techniques from them. So the U.S. government sold a dream, a bundled package of land, opportunity, and adventure. But like that vegetable spiralizer, the reality was far less glamorous. The Oregon Trail was arduous, dangerous, and often deadly. But it was also a testament to human resilience, determination, and the persistent belief in a better future. Much like that '86 Ford chugging along despite its dodgy engine. As you close your eyes tonight, think of those pioneers, the Whitmans, the families, the lone adventurers, drawn by the promise of a new life, propelled by a government's agenda, and facing untold dangers along the way. The Oregon Trail may have been a hard sell, but it was also a pivotal chapter in the story of a nation's expansion. So, sleep tight and dream of pioneers and promises, of journeys and destinations, and of how history is often a trail we blaze together. Imagine this. After months of bone-jarring travel in a covered wagon, you finally crest a hill, and there it is, the end of the Oregon Trail. The promised land of Oregon, stretching out before you like a green and gold patchwork quilt. You've made it. But what now? You're a city slicker, used to ordering your groceries online and having them delivered right to your door. How in the world are you going to survive in Oregon? A place where Amazon Prime doesn't exist, and you can't just Uber Eats a meal when you're hungry. Well, dear listener, let's peel back the layers of history like an onion. And like an onion, there might be a few tears involved. Because the truth is, the end of the Oregon Trail was just the beginning of a whole new set of challenges for the pioneers. First things first, let's talk about the land. Now, you might be thinking, hey, they promised me 640 acres. That's like a lot of land. And you'd be right. But here's the thing, this wasn't some pristine plot of land with a cute little farmhouse and a white picket fence. This was raw, wild land, untouched by human hands. No roads, no utilities, no Starbucks on the corner, just wilderness as far as the eye could see. So what did you do with all this wild land? Well, you had to clear it, of course. And I don't mean hiring a landscaping company to come in with their fancy machinery. I mean back-breaking labor, chopping down trees, pulling out stumps, and removing rocks. All with primitive tools. Imagine trying to build an IKEA bookshelf with a butter knife and you'll get the idea. Once your land was cleared, you needed to build a home. But this wasn't a quick trip to the local Home Depot for some lumber. You had to cut down trees, hew the logs, and then actually build your house. If you've ever struggled with a flat-pack piece of furniture, you can imagine how daunting this task was. And don't forget about food. You couldn't just pop down to the local supermarket for a loaf of bread and a quart of milk. You had to grow your own crops, hunt your own game, and milk your own cows. Life on the frontier required a whole different set of skills that many of the pioneers simply didn't have when they started out. But despite all these challenges, people thrived. They built communities, set up schools, and established churches. They learned how to live off the land, to be self-sufficient. They faced hardship and adversity, and they came out the other side stronger for it. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, think of those pioneers at the end of the Oregon Trail. They didn't have it easy, not by a long shot. But they had a dream, a vision of a better life. And they were willing to work hard, to face adversity, to make that dream a reality. And remember, the next time you're frustrated by a faulty Wi-Fi connection or a delayed Amazon delivery, think of the pioneers. They didn't have any of the conveniences we take for granted today. But they had something else, a spirit of determination, resilience, and a belief in a brighter future. So sleep tight and dream of that pioneering spirit. Dream of the vast, wild beauty of Oregon, of the challenges faced and overcome. And dream of the strength and resilience that lies within each of us, ready to be tapped into when we need it most. Good night. Imagine being in the shoes, or rather, the worn-out boots, of a pioneer on the Oregon Trail, faced with the grueling task of traversing 2,170 miles of rugged terrain. Unlike our modern-day commutes, which largely involve complaining about traffic while sipping on a perfectly brewed latte, these pioneers had to contend with harsh weather, deadly diseases, and the constant threat of accidents. Now, let's consider those who actually survived this treacherous journey. It's like finishing a marathon, only to realize that you've signed up for a triathlon. They didn't just pack up their wagons and ride off into the sunset. Instead, they had to roll up their sleeves and build entire communities from scratch in a land as wild and untamed as the dreams that brought them there. The legacy of the Oregon Trail is not just about the journey, but also about the remarkable resilience of those who embarked on it. It's about the indomitable spirit of pioneers like Marcus and Narcissa Whitman, those early trailblazers who braved the unknown to establish a mission in present-day Washington state. They didn't just set up camp, they laid the groundwork for future generations of settlers. But let's not forget, this wasn't a friendly neighborhood picnic. The trail had its fair share of tribulations. Think about the challenges we face today, maybe a flat tire or getting lost thanks to an unreliable GPS. Now, imagine dealing with broken wagon axles in the middle of nowhere, or contracting dysentery without a pharmacy in sight. Yet, despite these hardships, the pioneers persisted. And it wasn't just about survival, it was about forging a future. They built homesteads, schools, and churches. They cultivated the land and established trade. Their determination and grit were the cornerstones of the communities they built. However, we must also remember that this chapter of history has a darker side. The expansion westward wasn't just a tale of pioneering spirit. It was also a story of displacement and cultural upheaval. Native American tribes who had lived on these lands for centuries were uprooted and their way of life disrupted. The Oregon Trail, for many, was a path of manifest destiny, a belief in inevitable and rightful expansion. But for others, it was a road that led to loss and upheaval. So, as you lie in your comfortable bed tonight, spare a thought for those pioneers. For them, a bed was likely a rough-hewn slab of wood, a far cry from our plush mattresses with memory foam. And yet, they slept the sleep of the weary, their dreams filled with visions of a new dawn on the horizon. Remember, too, that they didn't have the convenience of next-day Amazon deliveries. If they needed something, they couldn't just tap a few buttons on their smartphone. Instead, they had to rely on their own resourcefulness and skills to make do with what they had. And perhaps, as you drift off to sleep, you could draw inspiration from their resilience. They didn't merely endure the Oregon Trail, they embraced it with all its challenges and opportunities. They built a legacy that lasted, not just in the communities they established, but also in the spirit of tenacity and courage they embodied. So let's not just remember the Oregon Trail as a historical journey. Let's remember it as a testament to human resilience, a journey of dreams, determination, and a deep-seated desire for a better life. Sweet dreams, and may you wake up tomorrow with the pioneering spirit of an Oregon Trail survivor. Good night. Imagine this. You're on a long, arduous journey across the American West, following the course of the Oregon Trail. You're braving severe weather, battling illnesses, and facing the harsh reality of life on the frontier. But this isn't a computer game. There's no reset button, no do-over. This is the real Oregon Trail, and it's a far cry from the romanticized version we often see in popular culture. Now, let's shift our focus to the original inhabitants of these lands, the Native American tribes. For them, the migration of settlers wasn't a thrilling adventure or a noble quest for manifest destiny. Rather, it was a time of displacement, suffering, and forced adaptation. The 19th century wasn't a great time to be a Native American, to put it mildly. Imagine being at a party, in fact. You're enjoying yourself, talking, laughing, and then suddenly, uninvited guests show up. They eat your food, drink your drinks, and eventually, they tell you to leave your own house. That's kind of what it was like for the Native American tribes during the westward expansion. As settlers flooded into the West, Native American tribes were often forced to give up their lands. They were displaced, pushed further and further west, away from their ancestral homes. Many were relocated to reservations, small parcels of land that were often far from their original territories. The U.S. government played a significant role in this process, promoting westward expansion and the idea of manifest destiny, the belief that the United States was destined to stretch from coast to coast. This was the 19th century version of go big or go home, except that going big meant taking over someone else's home. While the Oregon Trail was certainly a marvel of human determination and resilience, it also brought about the destruction of Native American cultures and societies. Communities were torn apart, traditions were lost, and entire ways of life were erased. And yet, despite all this, the Native American tribes endured. They adapted to their new circumstances, preserving their cultures and traditions against all odds. Today, they are a testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit, much like the pioneers of the Oregon Trail. So the next time you think about the Oregon Trail, remember, it wasn't just about pioneers braving the elements and forging a new life in the West. It was also about the Native American tribes who were forced to leave their homes and adapt to a new way of life. And while the journey was undoubtedly challenging for the pioneers, it was perhaps even more so for the Native Americans. It's easy to romanticize the past, to think of the Oregon Trail as a great adventure. But the reality was much more complex and often much darker. The trail was a place of hardship and suffering, not just for the pioneers, but also for the Native Americans who were displaced by the westward expansion. But hey, let's not end on a gloomy note. Remember, the past is a different country. They do things differently there. And while we can't change what happened, we can learn from it. We can honor the memory of those who suffered, and we can strive to do better in the future. So as you drift off to sleep, think about the real Oregon Trail, the triumphs and the tragedies, the heroes and the victims. And remember, we are all part of the great journey of history, each of us leaving our own trail in the sands of time. Good night. Did you know the Oregon Trail was not just a perilous journey across uncharted territories, but also a prolific source of inspiration for American literature and art? It's like that great, grand, and grueling road trip that everyone has a story about. Imagine this, you're an early settler. You've spent months traversing the wild, untamed landscapes of the American West, battling disease, fording rivers, and coping with the elements. And then one day, you reach your destination. You're in Oregon. You've made it. So, what do? You write about it, of course. You pen letters, you keep journals, you carve your name into rocks, anything to make your mark and tell your tale. Many of the narratives we have about the Oregon Trail come from personal diaries and letters written by the pioneers themselves. These accounts provide a fascinating glimpse into the hardships and triumphs of life on the trail. They're like the original road trip blogs, only with more dysentery and fewer selfies. And those stories didn't just stay in the private domain. They were published, shared, and circulated, shaping the public perception of the West and inspiring countless works of literature and art. Take, for example, the writings of Francis Parkman, a young man from Boston who journeyed along the Oregon Trail in 1846. His vivid descriptions of the landscape and the people he encountered along the way were published as the Oregon Trail, Sketches of Prairie and Rocky Mountain Life, a book that became a bestseller and a classic of American literature. Then there's Narcissa Whitman, who, along with her husband Marcus, established a mission in present-day Washington in 1836. Narcissa's letters home provide a unique perspective on the trail and the challenges faced by female pioneers. But it's not just about literature. The Oregon Trail also left an indelible mark on American art. Painters like Albert Bierstadt and Thomas Morin used the trail as inspiration for their grand landscapes, capturing the awe-inspiring beauty of the West in a way that words could not. These paintings, often larger than life and brimming with drama, helped to create a romanticized vision of the West that still permeates American culture today. Even in popular culture, the Oregon Trail has a significant impact. Ever play that old computer game, the Oregon Trail? Remember trying to keep your digital family alive, deciding whether to ford a river or caulk your wagon, and invariably dying of dysentery? That game, as pixelated and primitive as it may seem now, was part of a long tradition of storytelling about the Oregon Trail. It's like the 8-bit equivalent of a Francis Parkman novel. And let's not forget about the countless movies, TV shows, and songs that reference the Oregon Trail. From the classic westerns of the mid-20th century to modern pop culture phenomena like Little House on the Prairie and Oregon Trail, the musical, yes, that's a thing. The trail continues to inspire and captivate audiences, proving that its stories are as relevant and compelling today as they were in the 19th century. So the next time you're struggling with a difficult journey, whether it's a road trip, a difficult project, or just a particularly challenging day, remember the pioneers of the Oregon Trail. Maybe take a leaf out of their book and write about it, paint it, or turn it into a catchy song. Who knows, your story might just become the next great piece of American literature or art. Just remember to pack plenty of food and water, avoid unnecessary river fordings, and whatever you do, try not to die of dysentery. Sleep well. Imagine you're playing that old 8-bit computer game, the Oregon Trail. In the digital world, it's just a matter of pressing keys and making decisions on hunting, trading, and river crossings. But have you ever wondered how different the real Oregon Trail was from your screen's pixelated version? The Oregon Trail was a 2,170-mile long, grueling trek that pioneers took in the mid-19th century to travel from the Missouri River to the Oregon Territory. But it wasn't all about avoiding pixelated snakes and trying to cross rivers without drowning your oxen. There were real hardships like disease, accidents, and harsh weather conditions. Imagine trying to ford a river not with a click of a mouse, but with a real, panicked ox pulling a loaded wagon. And it wasn't just the physical challenges. The trail was a cultural melting pot, with settlers, missionaries, fur trappers, and Native American tribes all converging on the same path. The trail was more than just a route. It was a phenomenon of American expansionism, driven by the idea of manifest destiny. This was no game, it was life, raw and real, with every choice potentially a matter of survival. Despite the hardships, thousands of pioneers embarked on this journey, seeking a better life in the fertile lands of the Oregon Territory. And their experiences have been preserved in the form of diaries and letters, providing us with a window into their lives and struggles. These aren't just dry historical documents. They are raw, personal accounts, filled with hope, despair, and determination. And their legacy lives on, not just in computer games, but in the very fabric of American culture. The Oregon Trail has been immortalized in countless movies, TV shows, and songs, from classic westerns to modern pop culture phenomena like Little House on the Prairie. Even today, the trail continues to inspire and captivate, its stories as relevant and compelling as they were over a century ago. So imagine yourself on the Oregon Trail, not as a pixelated pioneer, but as a real person. Imagine the dust in your mouth, the ache in your bones, the fear in your heart as you make that risky river crossing. But also, imagine the hope, the dream of a better life that drove you to undertake such a perilous journey. And then consider your own journey, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a road trip, a difficult project, or just a particularly challenging day. Remember the pioneers of the Oregon Trail and take a leaf out of their book. Just remember to pack plenty of food and water, avoid unnecessary river fordings, and whatever you do, try not to die of dysentery. This is the Oregon Trail, not as a game, but as a living testament to the human spirit. So, the next time you're up against a challenge, think of those pioneers and their indomitable will. Your journey might not be as grueling as theirs, but in your own way, you're a pioneer too. And who knows, your story might just become the next great chapter in the history of the Oregon Trail. So sleep well and dream of pixelated oxen and wide-open prairies. The Oregon Trail might be a part of history, but its spirit lives on in every challenge we face and every dream we dare to pursue. As we wrap up our meander down the historical path that is the Oregon Trail, it's hard not to marvel at its significance in American history. It wasn't just a 2,170-mile route from the Missouri River to the Oregon Territory. No, it was more than that. It was a symbol of the irresistible allure of the West, of new beginnings and endless possibilities. And boy, did those pioneers have their work cut out for them. Imagine the scene: thousands of pioneers packing up their lives, bidding farewell to their familiar surroundings, and venturing into the unknown, all in pursuit of a better life. And we're not just talking about a few bumps in the road here. We're talking about disease, accidents, harsh weather conditions, you name it. It was the survivor before survivor was even a thing, but with no $1 million prize at the end, just the promise of a fresh start. These pioneers were the original road trippers, but their journey was a far cry from our modern-day road trips, with our climate-controlled cars, GPS navigation, and roadside diners. They had covered wagons, rough maps, if they were lucky, and meals that were more about survival than savoring the flavors. And let's not forget the occasional river fording, which was more treacherous than any highway traffic jam. But despite the hardships, these pioneers pressed on, driven by a spirit of adventure, a desire for a better life, and the belief in manifest destiny. Yes, the idea that it was the U.S. government's divine mission to expand its territory from coast to coast was a driving force behind this westward expansion. It was like the 19th century version of a marketing campaign, and it worked. The Oregon Trail wasn't just a physical journey, it was a cultural phenomenon as well. It had a profound impact on the Native American tribes who had been living on these lands for centuries. And it played a pivotal role in shaping the identity of the United States as a nation. The journey was fraught with danger, and not everyone who set out on the trail reached their destination. But those who did, well, they were the ones who helped to shape the West as we know it today. They were the fur trappers, the missionaries, the gold rushers, and the farmers, all drawn by the lure of the West and the promise of a new beginning. The Oregon Trail is a testament to the human spirit, to our innate desire to explore, and to our capacity to endure. It reminds us that we are, in many ways, the sum of our journeys. So, the next time you're navigating a challenging project or facing a tough day, think of those pioneers and their indomitable spirit. You might not be fording rivers or warding off diseases, but in your own way, you're blazing a trail too. So as we bid adieu to the Oregon Trail, let's take a moment to appreciate its enduring legacy. It's more than just a chapter in a history book or a retro computer game. It's a part of our collective heritage, a reminder of where we've come from, and a testament to our capacity to dream, to dare, and to persevere. And that, my friend, is something worth remembering. So sleep well and dream of wide-open prairies and the indomitable spirit of the pioneers. Your journey might not be as grueling as theirs, but remember, you're a pioneer in your own right. And who knows, maybe your story will be the next chapter in the great adventure that is the American dream.